Hello and welcome to a special show we're doing for the Breeders' Cup. We're going daily, in the money daily, and it's Monday, October 24th. I'm your host, Peter Thomas Fornatale, back with you in the Brooklyn Bunker once again, and joined by a man coming to us from his traditional location, the planet Texas. He is Jonathon Kinchen. JK, what's up?
PTF, I am the planet Texas for the moment, but about to get back on the road again, little Saratoga, and then down to Lexington to hang out with you.
Are you excited for the Breeders' Cup? I mean, like, you're so busy these days. How do you still get that buzz that you used to get around a big event like this?
Yeah, no, I do for sure. I mean, there's 3 or 4 days throughout the year that really get you going, and this is one of them, right? You know, Derby Day is always exciting. Belmont Day, and then you get a little Travers Breeders' Cup, and you got a pretty full calendar of excitement. So no, I still get really excited. It's 14 unbelievable races with some of our favorite horses. And as a horse player, it's the best betting opportunities that you have. You can do whatever you really want to do on those days, and it doesn't really matter. Much different than a Thursday at Aqueduct.
You mean doesn't matter in terms of like moving your prices or whatever?
Yeah, moving your prices.
Opportunities.
Absolutely. And I feel like opportunities, loves that you might have on a Friday or a Saturday, those love ideas, typically there's not a lot of value because if you love them for all of these reasons, there's a lot of other times people love them too. Breeders' Cup, there still seems to be meat on the bone.
Meat on the bone, indeed. That was the phrase I was going to use if you didn't. Great paper on horses that are going to be 10 to 1, 12 to 1, 15 to 1. We did a whole other video about long shots you can check out. But this video, we're going to go to the other end of the odds spectrum, JK. We're going to look at the favorites. We're going to try to analyze which of these favorites do we think we can beat. Which of these favorites do you think we might just have to accept and get stuck into? Something you're not afraid to do, as you famously made some 5-figure bets on favorites and gotten some pretty darn good results in the Breeders' Cup betting challenge as a result. Let's start with the Breeders' Cup Turf Sprint. This is an interesting race, JK, because I can't tell you with absolute confidence who the favorite's going to be, but you would think that it's going to be Golden Pal over the big international invader, the Platinum Queen, though she will certainly have her supporters. Let's look at this question through the lens of Golden Pal. Is this a favorite you can get stuck into? Is this a favorite you think you might be able to beat?
He's the type of horse that I've tried to get cute beating him before, and I haven't been successful. He's had some suspect races. I think a lot of people will look to that race in Saratoga, the Troy, where he barely beat Thin White Duke, but they did something different with him that day that I don't project they're going to do. He seems to run better at Keeneland. He feels like the type of favorite that I would be more inclined to lean on than try to beat playing his game on his home course. I would consider Keeneland to be his home course. I would imagine he's run at Keeneland more than anywhere else, including workouts. I would think that turf course is home for him. So you mentioned the Platinum Queen.
I misspoke.
She's a 2-year-old, right?
Yeah, she's going in the juvenile. I was going to correct myself if you didn't. If you hadn't corrected me. Now, talking about Highland Princess will be the big Euro in that race.
I will say this, so it doesn't help very much. I was looking forward to trying to beat Golden Pal with Big Invasion, the Christophe Clement runner that ran so well, but he's not running. He's coming back next year. So that idea is kind of gone. The only couple of ideas I guess you could have is like a horse like Caravel, who's kind of found her own, but she's not running quite fast enough, I think, to beat a horse like Golden Pal.
And I misspoke again. I'm not going to edit. We're just going to go with it. We're loosey-goosey around here. Highfield Princess, the horse I was trying to say. Let's pivot, though, to the Platinum Queen's race. And I do think she'll probably be the favorite, almost definitely be the favorite in the juvenile turf sprint, having that form against elders, just having run some absolutely huge races. This is a race that's been on the radar of connections for a long time. That's what I like. But I could take the point that as a European invader, they have won turf sprints at the Breeders' Cup, but their overall record not that good, and the starting gate so different, braking so different in America than overseas. I'm going to definitely be backing the Platinum Queen in some ways, shapes, and forms, but this does feel like one where maybe you're supposed to at least think about going with something at a little bit more of a price, just because of all the inherent chaos.
Yeah, the thing with her is, and I'm going to have to see some figures. People are going to get very, very caught up in the fact that she beat Olders. Not that it isn't something to get caught up in, but this is still it's still a flat, short turf sprint where you got to break, you got to get away from there clean, and you're facing other good, talented horses. Speedboat Beach is one that I'm still very interested in as an opportunity because I talk about it all the time in these turf sprints. My favorite thing is speed in turf sprints. I don't care if it looks like it's going to fall apart. Give me the speed of the speed. And I don't think there's any questions that Speedboat Beach is the speed of the speed. It's a Bob Baffert trained horse that ran extremely fast early on debut, ran extremely fast early parts of the race last time. Did get a little bit tired. The final number probably didn't come back as fast as some might want, but this feels like the type of horse that could take another step forward. I think Speedboat Beach is interesting if you're going to try to beat the Platinum Queen.
Let's talk about the Breeders' Cup Juvenile. Here's going to be maybe the biggest favorite. Well, no, probably Flightline, and we'll get to him, will be the biggest favorite overall. But you could make a case that Cave Rock should be the biggest favorite based on what he's shown, based on the fact that the horse that I've touted in several videos, Loggin's not going to be making an appearance, unfortunately, as it turns out. Can we beat Cave Rock, and how?
No, I mean, I hope not. Like I said on our show we did previously, there's no secrets. Later in the Breeders' Cup Betting Challenge, there's probably some conversations that I would probably want to keep private, but this isn't one that I'm concerned about. Every dollar I have will be bet on Cave Rock to win.
How's that for confidence, folks? We'll see as we get closer if the confidence stays that high. But if he looks the way in person that he's run in the last couple of races, definitely looks like one you could probably get stuck into. On the other side of the coin, the Breeders' Cup Juvenile Fillies. This is a race I've already said I'm going to try to reach for something at a price. I could see a 20-1 shot winning this race. But one thing's given me pause about that opinion, JK, and it's this massive heater that Todd Pletcher has been on, both at Keeneland and in New York. I'm guessing, and it's just a guess, that Chocolate Gelato will go as the favorite here. I think I'm going to try to beat her because I don't know that there's that much between her and some of these others, and it feels like a race where something could step up and run well at a big price. But she's certainly deserving of respect and probably a place at the top of the market. Yeah,
I mean, I'm a huge fan of Chocolate Gelato. Myself and Austin, that was actually his first bet of the summer. He bet Chocolate Gelato too. On debut, and when she got beat, it was very disappointing. Then she came back and she ran fast, but her last race, it wasn't fast enough for me to lean on her as who's likely to be the favorite. I don't think she's like a bad horse. I just don't think she's going to present a lot of value. I wouldn't be shocked if she won. I think she might be the best horse in the race, but I think there's an opportunity to try to beat her here. A horse like Wonder Wheel will probably be taking a little bit of money as well. But one that has my interest is the Michael McCarthy trainee, Uncontrollable, for Rapoli Stables, the other Rapoli in here. She ran well in the Chandelier and got a fast enough number. And one of the things I've realized about Michael McCarthy's training style as we become friendly, and I've just kind of watched him from a distance, is his horses that are training out on those deeper racetracks in California, they seem to really run well when they come out east or they show up somewhere else. You think about Cece and the time she's run at Oaklawn, or you think about City of Light and what he did. I think she's interesting to take a step forward. What she's done on paper doesn't make me want to cut in line to bet on her to win, but I do believe that there's a possible step forward, and she should be a pretty big price on the board.
20-1 in the anti-post markets right now, JK. It could be party time at Keeneland if he can get that one in. Breeders' Cup Juvenile Fillies Turf is a race I'm guessing you haven't been able to do too much work on before we know exactly who's going to be there. The favorite will be, I would think, a European runner, Blue Rose Sen, right now at the top of the international markets. For me, I'd take Meditate over Blue Rose Sen, and just off the cuff and what I know of the figures. But generally speaking, in this race, what's your approach about leaning on a favorite in a contest like the Juvenile Fillies Turf?
Yeah, I mean, I do what I basically always do in these races, which is listen to the information that you offer with your knowledge when it comes to the European races. I'll check in with someone like Craig Bernick, who's really plugged into the breeding operations and the breeding and the what's going on over there. And then I'll listen to Nick Luck as much as I can, just kind of giving some ideas about who these horses are, what they've beat, if there is any kind of weird biases on any of the racetracks these horses are exiting. And then I try to make decisions backward. But the juvenile turf races, I always start with those, unless there happens to be something freaky that we've seen, like a newspaper of record. Just don't know that there is anything freaky. You know, a horse like Free Look, if that horse wins for Chad, am I going to be shocked? No, not at all. I think one horse that is interesting to me is Delight for Jonathan Thomas, who is a forward type turf runner. And I think that those horses are always a little bit dangerous when facing the Euros, because the Euros are typically not as forward as our horses are. And I think that Delight, who's run well over the course, Jonathan Thomas usually takes his time with horses. They seem to get better. And you think about a horse like Catholic Boy, that just kept getting better and better. I think Delight's interesting at what should be a pretty nice little price, considering the Euros usually take a lot of money.
In the international markets, Delight is the favorite amongst the domestics right now, 6-1, the best price available on her. I was going to mention her to you if you didn't. And you talked about Nick Luck. The plan, and hopefully we'll get this nailed down. It's not nailed down yet, but is to have Nick on with sort of our first look at the Europeans. That might be the video that we pop up tomorrow in this space.
One more that I'll mention. I don't know what's going to happen with her, but if Chiguera somehow finds herself into the body of the field, I don't know what happened there. But from what I understand, the way that that race, I'm going to go blank on whatever the filly race is called on the 2-year-old turf filly race at Keeneland.
Oh, not the Alcibiades. She ran in the Alcibiades.
No, she ran the Alcibiades, but the turf race. Long story short, Jessamine. I feel like the Jessamine was going to oversubscribe, and there was something about the oversubscription of that was going to keep Chiguera out of it, and that's why she ran on the dirt. She was just trying to. I don't know that for sure. That's what I think happened, because I don't understand why she didn't run in that race. But I think she was one of the most impressive horses we saw at Saratoga. And let's not remember who she ran second to, Pink Hue, who I think would be potentially favored in this race based on her performance. But she unfortunately got ill. And so Chiguera is one that if she can find her way into the body of this field, I think she'd be dangerous for the U.S. runners.
And if you're looking down confusedly and saying, where's the horse that's name starts with J, starts with an X, and you're pronouncing it exactly right, but just to let people know. And longtime listeners of the show are just going to assume that you were winding me up trying to get me to say Alcibiades on the show. We'll leave that as an inside joke. You know, if you know when it comes to that one. Juvenile Turf up next, JK. Charlie Appleby seemingly can do no wrong. I'm going to guess that his Silver Knot is going to go as a big favorite in this spot. My one caveat would be the run on soft ground, 2 back, not great. And Rob Dove, one of the top 10 pro punters in the UK today, made the point to me, watch the tape and you can see how uncomfortable he is on the soft ground, switching his leads back and forth. Anyway, if it's a bog, and who knows, I know there's some showers for it. It's 11 days away, people. Let's not worry about the forecast quite this far out. But I will say that would give me pause about getting too stuck in. But at this point, from what you've seen from Appleby, if all systems are go, if the ground is right, are you willing to go in Appleby we trust at this point at the Breeders' Cup?
Yeah, I mean, I think that's definitely where you're going to start, right? You want to start with that conversation. I will say this, though. I was pretty impressed on debut by I'm Very Busy, the Chad Brown runner who won at Saratoga first out, then ran second in the Pilgrim on yielding ground. With lightly raced horses like that, they could get to a different surface and run well. I thought I'm Very Busy showed enough talent. There's another horse that just showed up here that I don't know if they're going to enter. I have no idea. Oxymore is a horse that was a sprinter, ran a couple of times as a sprint, switched to Chad Brown, won the Skidmore at Saratoga, and then stretched out. I remember talking to Chad after the Skidmore, and he said, I'm going to run Oxymore at Monmouth. And I go, oh, is there a sprint there? And he goes, no, 2 turns. And I go, you're going to run her 2 turns? And he goes, oh, I mean, unless you don't want me to. It's very funny, man. And I just think that he's always thought that horse will go further. And you talk about speed and running them off their feet. That horse has a ton of speed. And if he can run anything like I think an Italian might run in the filly and mare turf, I think Oxymore could be dangerous if he finds his way into this race.
Double digits at the moment, but some of that is probably about the uncertainty of the spot. We'll keep the ears to the ground. One thing about doing these daily shows, we'll bring you news and headlines and let you know, who's in, who's out as much as possible. Breeders' Cup filly and mare turf. There's a runner in here who's going to be the favorite, Nashwa, that if I covered up the names and just showed you PPs, the PP cut would be looking very, very similar to many, many horses who've run this race. She's got the figures. She's got the form. We got to see who shows up, not just from her compatriots over there, but also on the domestic side. You've tipped your hand, though. You're not with the favorite here. It sounds like you got a strong opinion.
Yeah, no, I mean, I like an Italian quite a bit. This is just a little bit a side note. As far as the Breeders' Cup betting challenge goes, like I have a hard time leaning too heavily on a race like this because turf racing can be so chaotic and trips and things like that. But in Italian, you know what trip she's going to get. She's going to find the front. No one's going to be in front of her. Joelle's ridden her twice brilliantly. He understands who she is. The distance isn't going to be a problem for her. She ran extremely well in the Diana, and 3 horses came back and won their next starts out of the Diana. So it was definitely a productive race. And just like any other time, there's a 4-legged animal running in a semicircle. Being on the front end is dangerous. And I think in Italian has shown how good she is. And I don't care who's running behind her. They better time their ride perfectly or she'll get loose. She likes it at Keeneland too.
I wouldn't tell you to not press up in Italian, but I would tell you to take an extra look at Nashwa in that spot. Breeders' Cup Mile, a race where it had long been assumed that Modern Games was going to go the heavy favorite. Not necessarily so, and not now in the international markets with all the support that double Group 1 winner Kinross is getting. Right now, best prices anyway, Kinross 5-2, Modern Games 3-1. I have a feeling that in the actual USA tote market, Modern Games will go the favorite. How much were you impressed by his run at Woodbine? How surprised were you that he came back and ran at Champions Day? And can you get stuck into it?
I mean, I loved Modern Games' performance at Woodbine. I actually kind of thought, this might be a situation where I can kind of lean on. And then there's the performance on Champions Day. But, if this horse shows up here, I think you're going to see a race similar to what you saw at Woodbine. Is that going to be good enough? I do think that he's a favorite that I would tread lightly trying to beat if he ends up being favored. But another horse that has my attention, and there's a lot to try to figure out here. There's a lot of workout conversations you want to hear. But let's not forget how darn good Domestic Spending was when he was running. And to see him possibly show back up in here would be really, really cool. And he would be a horse that I would have a real hard time letting beat me.
Yeah, and he'll be taking a lot of money if he gets that positive workout type vibe around about him. Right now, big prices available, but that's the kind of thing that might not be big, will not be big prices on the day. I think if he goes there, he's going there because he's doing well, and if he's doing well, he'll be a fraction of the price. That's an interesting idea for some international bettors for sure. And yeah, we'll see. I'm also really curious to get to see Modern Games in the flesh and see if he looks as good as he did before that race at Woodbine. Breeders' Cup Sprint. You've got sort of a 2-headed monster at the top of the market. You've talked about both of these horses in another video. Jackie's Warrior and Jack Christopher. Jackie's Warrior, the one who is going to be favored or is favored now in the international markets. If Jack Christopher is confirmed for this race, do you think he'll be the favorite?
No, I think Jackie will be favored. I think Jackie will be favored. He's just been around too long. People know his name too much. He's the real sprinter. Jack Christopher's the middle distance horse cutting back. Is he going to like it? I mean, I like Jack personally in that situation, Christopher, over Jackie's Warrior. I think Jackie's Warrior is the type of horse that has been brilliant throughout his career, but he has at times been underwhelming when things haven't gone perfectly for him. And I think that there's enough talented horses in here that could be problematic. I tell you one thing, if you like Jackie's Warrior, you're a Jackie's Warrior fan, you better hope he draws outside of Jack Christopher. I don't think you want Jack Christopher breathing down his neck. I think the real interesting horse for me is Kamari. If she shows up in here and runs against the boys based off her last couple of races, she fits. If the two Jacks happen to hook up with each other at the 8th pole and make a fight out of it, I could see Kamari swooping down the middle of the track on Wesley Ward's playground and beating people out of bets who thought it was a 2-horse race. So I think Kamari is the interesting one, depending on what race she runs in. And I would imagine that the decision will be made based on what Wesley ultimately thinks she wants from a distance standpoint. Does she want to go 6 or does she want to go 7?
Let's talk dirt mile. Right now, the favorite, Jack Christopher, we feel like he might be leaning towards a sprint. We don't really know. We'll see. If he goes in the dirt mile, personally, I'd find him a very difficult one to take on. This is just sort of a funny race to guess about because we don't know who's running here. But if you have a quick thought about what your approach to Jack Christopher would be, should he turn up in the dirt mile, maybe that's the best way to go.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think he is. I mean, I know Chad had seen in an interview, just kind of said they're leaning towards the sprint at this point. Mm-hmm. So I just feel like leaning toward, if he's going to say leaning towards the sprint at this point, like he just wouldn't have said anything if it was going to be something different than that. So I would think that's probably where they'll end up going. I think Laurel River will take a lot of money. Seems a little bit buzzy, ran fast last time. It's Bob Baffert. It's a dirt race to mile. I think he's a horse that's interesting, but it's going to be hard for me not to get really excited about an opportunity to bet on Cody's Wish, who I thought ran extremely well at Saratoga. And, he's a horse that just looks like he might be serious right now. And the way that he beat Jackie's Warrior, I think he beat him on the square. That's why I'm not mad at Jackie's Warrior's performance. I think Jackie ran his race. I think Cody's Wish just ran better. So Bill Mott with a target we always talk about. I think Cody's Wish could be pretty tough to beat, even if Jack Christopher does show up in this 2-turn mile race.
I think he will be the favorite if Jack Christopher doesn't go. And I'll spare you another inside joke. I'll spare you having to talk about Cyberknife, who might turn up there. Breeders' Cup Distaff, Nest, looking in the international markets like a solid and significant favorite over Malathot. It'll certainly be those top two at the market. And has your opinion on this evolved? You had said previously you were sure it was going to be one of the Pletchers in this spot. Are you feeling the same way a week or so later?
Yeah, no, I still think it's going to be a Pletcher. But the problem is Nest is going to mess around and end up being a pretty good price, I think. I've heard way too many. It's those kind of those like, and there's typical opinions you get from those people who just like are dying to have a
wise guys. Wise guys, is that what we're talking about?
Yeah, not really wise guys. I think wise guys have kind of got this negative kind of connotation. I think a wise guy is someone who's trying to think opposite of the public but trying to do it in a way to make money. What I see often is people try to get too cute.
The pseudo wise guy.
Yeah,
wise guy is one of those funny words. You know, there's a word for it, antagonym. It's a word that means the same thing as its opposite. And so there are wise guys like, you know, proper wise guys, people whose opinion you're going to follow. And then there's the sort of pseudo wise guy, people trying to be clever kind of idea. I think that's more in the lines of what you're talking about.
Yeah, it's just like, it's like the $2 show wise guy. Like there's no consequence, and I'm not making fun of how much people bet. I'm saying there's no consequence to that bad opinion. And I think trying to get overly excited about trying to beat Nest is kind of a mistake.
She's live. I just think there's too much between her and Malathot.
Like I said,
and the other's 3-1. To me, that's a no-brainer choice. But it's not like Nest can't win.
No, and they worked together the other day, which I thought was pretty cool. If you haven't seen that, try to catch that on XBTV or just YouTube in general. But they worked together, and I kind of feel like Malathot probably went a little bit better.
She usually, when they've worked in company before, I've always thought Malathot has gone a little bit better.
But Nest is more tactical. Nest can make her own trip. If the pace is slow, Nest is going to be close. So I just feel like they're just very close. So yes, Malathot probably offers more value, but I think getting too cute trying to beat Nest is going to be a mistake. So, I think she will be the favorite. I think she deserves to be a favorite. And I'm going to kind of sit on the fence. I'm not going to try to beat her. I'm going to use her, but I'm going to make sure that I use Malathot as well.
Don't get splinters in your behind sitting on that fence, JK. Filly and Mare Sprint. This one surprises me at just how big of a favorite Goodnight Olive is internationally. I'm not convinced she's going to be the favorite. I think there's a lot of narratives that could emerge. Echo Zulu, just one runner. I mean, look at her PP cut. She looks like she could be a favorite for this race easily. You've got, should Kamari go here? She'll take a lot of money. You've got CC, the returning champion in the race. Who knows? But for right now, Goodnight Olive is the favorite. How much do you trust her? How much do you want to beat her?
I don't really love her as the favorite. I thought she was a cute little interesting idea if she was going to be 3, 4, 5-1 as the favorite. I mean, I think you want to try to. I think you want to. If you're betting to win, I think you want to try to beat her. I'm not going to try to beat her in terms of multi-race bets. Latruska's on this list. Is that true? Or this is just a bad list?
I hadn't seen that. I thought they were giving up for Latruska and regrouping. That was the last I had heard.
Well, I think the other one that I think you'll keep in mind is Obligatory. When she gets 7/8 and she gets pace to close into, she's pretty good. She runs well in Kentucky. And when I say they run well in Kentucky, I think I want to what I'm insinuating is I think sometimes in different jurisdictions, you can do different things. And whatever those things might be, I think that if you can identify a horse that runs well in a certain jurisdiction, there's reason to believe that possibly there's something that goes on there that helps them, makes them.
No, you don't necessarily mean anything.
No funny business.
But yeah, just what's allowed in terms of medication, etc. And I mean, some horses just famously adapt better to certain surroundings or get over certain racetracks better. You put that all in the hopper. There's a reason why we have horses for courses, and I think in certain times that can be expanded to horses for states. So I hear your logic and agree completely that obligatory might end up being the interesting one in there. 2 more races left to talk about, couple of minutes to do it. Breeders' Cup Turf, not exactly sure who the favorite's going to be. Internationally, it's looking like Rebels Romance might be the one at the top of the list. Certainly, there's going to be lots of Charlie Appleby representation, and he might send out the top pick and the second to top pick. So maybe that's the lens through which to look at this. How much are you inclined to just trust Appleby in this spot? How much are you inclined to get clever?
Yeah, I mean, I think that from an American standpoint, in our tote, and our tote's the main tote, and it's where most of the money's going to be, but I just feel like there's going to be an opportunity to try to beat Warlike Goddess, and she's going to take money. Now, she might not ultimately be favored. One of the Euros is likely to be favored, but she's going to take money. She's going to be used in multi-race bets. She is going to be a horse that if you can toss and not use, you are picking up some value. So I'm going to try to beat her there. And like in most of these situations, I'm going to kind of lock into some of the Euros, whether it was Tarnawa or Yabir. I just think in this category, of all of the categories, when they have a good one, their good ones are better than our good ones. The problem is that sometimes they don't bring their good ones, and then our good ones can beat their kind of B team ones. But I think when they have a good one, it's hard to compete, and it seems like they might have a couple.
We used to play this game on the show. We still do from time to time, sort of a reverse name that tune. In how few words can you do this year's Breeders' Cup Classic?
Oh, no, I'm not going to beat Flightline. One word, Flightline.
One word.
Yeah, Flightline. But I do think that if you're going to try to beat him, there are 2 horses that people are going to make mistakes trying to beat him with, which I do feel like presents some value. I think it's a mistake to try to beat him with Life is Good. They run too similar of styles, in Flightline. I just feel like is going to at some point look him in the eye, and it's going to go, life might not be quite as good for Life is Good after that happens. And I think people are going to try to get cute with this. Rich Strike's not as bad as the punchline he has been since the Derby. And although that might be the case, he can't warm up what Epicenter is now. He can't beat that Epicenter. He can't beat what Taiba is now. He beat them on the day, on Derby Day, but that circuit with a perfect trip and a huge setup. He's not better than those horses. So Epicenter for me is the most likely winner if it's not Flightline. Taiba would be second, the kind of second in that conversation is the next likely winner. I just think that those 2 horses make the most sense. And they also rate to take another step forward. Where I just feel like we
3-year-olds. Yeah,
we know who Life is Good is. And he's brilliant. I don't want to make fun of him. He's a brilliant, brilliant horse. But he's not beating Flightline.
I'll bring you a question that comes from In the Money Plus editor Tyler Wisman. I think you'll like this. And for folks looking for extra content on the Breeders' Cup, do check out our Plus service, inthemoneycuppodcast.com/plus. You have 70,000 heading into the Classic. What do you do?
I wouldn't have 70 because I would have played the double.
You will not be in that situation.
Yeah, no, I think I would probably try to play exactas with Flightline on top, with Epicenter and Taiba in second. Maybe a little saver with like a horse like Hot Rod Charlie in second, or something kind of goofier like that, a smaller denomination there. But I think a majority of that money I would try to run it through there with Flightline on top. But depending on what the leaderboard was,
right. That's going to dictate a lot.
Yeah. If I had 70 going into the last and the person in front of me had like 82, I would just bet the 70 to win on Flightline and take the 1 to 2 and try to jump them there, move, and then hope no one hits.
Right. So somebody's going to have some ginormous double to Flightline though. Like I even if the leader had 82 going in, I'd tell you to shoot higher than. I still might tell you to try to turn Flightline into at least an even money shot to get 130, 140.
Yeah, and it's also just kind of like but the thing is like we've talked about this before, not to go down this rabbit hole, but like if I believe that it's Epicenter or Taiba that are going to run second in that exacta, someone's going to pop that exacta.
Yeah.
Someone's going to hit a $10,000 exacta like that. Someone will. You know what I'm saying? Like, because it's predictable. Like in the Justify Belmont, remember Gronkowski ran second. If someone else would have ran second, I think the board would have blown up in that contest. But since it was Gronkowski, no one really attacked that hard.
Yep.
You know, I think sometimes the wilder the result, people might think, oh, it's a huge payout, it's gonna blow up the board. But a lot of times the more logical ones are the ones that blow up the board.
JK, we're out of time. We're going to have you back for some of these In the Money Daily shows, get more thoughts on the Breeders' Cup Betting Challenge, more thoughts on these races. But it's great catching up with you, and we will be talking soon.